you doing? Welcome to another Jason Harris podcast. Now, things have changed a little bit since my last one. Those who listened before, this was called J-Life Fit. I'm now branding as Jason Harris for the reason that I'm doing dog training, I do fitness, I'm putting it all together. So I'm going under the name simply of Jason Harris Podcast. This way it leaves me still do the open chat style. I can cover a lot of different areas of whatever I want to talk about. For those who are listening to this on audio only, I'm sitting outdoors on a beautiful winter's day in Australia. If you hear any odd noises, it's a bit windy and possibly a little bit rainy maybe, so bear with me. But I thought this is a good opportunity to just have a chat. I want to do my first one about dog training today and just cover a few different topics that I think people need to remember when training a dog, when they get a dog, things that can help out. There's a lot more than what I'm going to talk about, but this will cover a few things to get people started who may be unsure and just starting out with a dog or a new puppy and things like that, or have an older dog, doesn't matter. So let's get started. For those who don't know, a little bit on my background just before I do is I've been training dogs all my life since I was a little young man. Had a young dog and I used to train it very young, my mother told me. But professionally, I was in the army as a police dog handler in the Australian military, and I did that for a while, which was a great job and I loved that. And then I worked at Sydney Airport with the quarantine detector dogs, the Beagles. Had my own dog training business for several years and Port Macquarie training all the dogs from general obedience to protection work to scent detection, covering a lot of different fields which I very much loved, and moved away to the Middle East for several years, and now I'm living back, so I'm back starting it again and loving it and missed it very, very much. So I've pretty much been training dogs a lot of my life, always had a passion for it. So I want to share some of those, my experiences and knowledge with people, and hopefully I can help people out. So what I want to cover today firstly is when you get a new dog, when to start your training. A lot of people, that's a common question people ask often is, when do I start training? Do I have to wait to 6 months, whatever it is? And the answer is no, you start from day one. Look, you start in different ways. With a young puppy, obviously, we be a lot more gentle about it and have a lot more fun involved. But we want to get into dog training with their young pups with that imprinting stage. So we imprint those good lessons on the dog, even though you might not see a lot of these behaviours come out because they're young. It's a bit like young children. A 2-year-old, you still teach them the rules, even though you probably know they're not going to follow through with it, but you know later in life these rules are going to be instilled in that young child, and dog training is very similar to that. Starting young is the way to go, to imprint positive things into the dog's mind, having good experiences and just enjoying being around the dogs and people and socialising and so forth. So the answer is start very, very young. As soon as you get your dog home, you should be implementing your dog training just with small rewards, little treats, practicing your sits and your stays, making it fun, enjoyable, very, very short sessions, a couple of minutes. They're only young puppies. They're not going to listen for long. They get very tired very quick. But starting very, very young with your dog is really important to get that positive training going and have a good connection with your puppy and have a good connection with training that they tend to enjoy it. So you want to imprint that very, very young. Whatever style training you do, that is up to you, but the answer is young. Younger the better. As the dog ages, we change our training according to the dog's age and maturity and how we train them. You know, when they get to a year old, 9 months old, a year old, we start getting obviously a little bit firmer with our training and expecting a bit more out of our dogs. But as young puppies, we want to keep it a lot of fun. We still want to follow the same rules. What rules they are is up to you. Mine would be, thinking about rules of the one command and the one response, and being reasonably expecting things out of your pup, not asking 4 or 5 times, but keeping it a lot more gentle with a young dog. And we want to keep it fun and enjoyable. You don't want to have experience of training if you're negative. We want them to enjoy it. So yes, you change your training as they age according to their concentration span, their breed, their ability. You judge your dog, a bit like, again, you judge your child according to what they can do. But remember to start young. Now, I want to talk to you about a few things that I believe are caused by owners or dogs' experiences, but can be limited, and you can actually stamp these things out. If you're a person that you get the dog and you know where it comes from, I'm not talking to a dog that comes from a shelter, and you don't know its history, but if you've had it from a young pup, things like anxiety, separation anxiety, I believe nearly all of this is caused by an owner inadvertently, not on purpose. It's not a bad thing. The owners aren't trying to do it. They just don't know any better. So this is an important thing that can be stamped out. And it's fairly easy, in my opinion, to I always keep saying my opinion because it is only my opinion. It doesn't make me 100% correct. These are judged on my experiences and what I think about how I've seen dogs act and knowing the owners and experiences and judged on that. So people may have different experiences, but this is my opinion. Yeah, the anxiety often is caused by owners meaning well, but they will get a dog, and probably one of the biggest mistakes that happens with a dog is people spend too much time with their dog, and you may hear that and go, what do you mean? I should be with my dog all the time. Well, not really, no. Your dog's got to learn that you are going to go away and you are going to come back. No different than a dog being in the wild and their mother, their father may go away. If you're thinking about dogs that live in, hundreds of years ago, they have to go and hunt and bring food back. And they may be gone for days, may be gone for hours, and these dogs have to deal with it. And your young pup has the same instincts as that. So this is where we get it wrong with dogs. We think that they're now domesticated, so they're different animals and we don't have to treat them the same. This is incorrect. They're still bred and they still have those instincts that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they're not gone. We just don't see them, they don't come to the surface as much, but they're still very much there. So you need to remember that if you don't have time away from your dog for the first, let's say 4 weeks, and then suddenly at a month in you go away for 5 hours, that dog may freak out about it, and this is what can cause separation anxiety. So what we need to remember are things like when you bring your young puppy home, even as a young pup, that it can sleep in a separate place from you. It doesn't always start sleeping with you. I know it's hard when the dog's crying and barking, but when that dog's yelping and barking, you might check on it, but we don't want to teach the dog from day one, if I bark, 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 you'll come and get me and I'll go to sleep with you. From that day there forward, that dog's going to learn, how do I get control of my parents? I just bark and yelp, they'll come and get me and bring me in. And that's where you start imprinting that anxiety, because it starts reinforced. How do I get them to come? I cause mischief. I bark, I bite, I do whatever I want to do. I scratch the furniture, they'll come and get me. We need to teach the dog that that's not going to work. We're not going to put up with that behaviour. How you deal with that, that's another conversation. Whether you ignore it, whether you go and reprimand the dog, again, another conversation. But what you need to be aware of is not having too much time with your dog, having time away. It may be that you have your dog at home and you leave it at home in a controlled area, safe, but you go for a walk for 10 minutes by yourself without the dog. When you do this, when you go, don't make a fuss. Don't go, oh, I'm going, watch out, I'm going. And when I come back, make a fuss. Just walk out the door. When you come home, again, don't make a fuss for the first few minutes, I would say. Come home, hey, how you doing to the dog? Quick pat, walk off. Later on, a few minutes in, then you might start giving the dog a lot more attention. But be aware this separation anxiety can be caused from use. You can make a game of this. When you're practicing your stays, do your stays, and then you build to the point where you're doing hidden stays. Your dog might stay in a position and you go away for first time 10 seconds, 20, 30, 40, build up to 5 minutes. The dog learns to stay there for 5 minutes until you come back. Don't call the dog from where it is, you return to the dog. Sometimes you'll do recalls, but we don't want to teach the dog that you'll always teach it to come from that spot. It stays there until you come back, you reward it, good dog, no bad behaviour. So anxiety can be very easily stamped out or not created in the start by being aware of these things, not having too much time with your dog, having time away from your dog, teaching that you'll come back and it's not a big deal. But don't go from 4 months with your dog, no time away, to suddenly thinking you can leave for a day. The dog's probably going to freak out, especially if you had a young pup. So let's try and remember those things. Now aggression, again, another one that I believe. Again, I'm taking out dogs here that were in shelters and so forth. I'm talking about dogs that you know where they were. You've had them from young dogs. Aggression. Aggression, I believe, is caused by owners, whether it be training it into the dog or causing it by, normally comes back to lack of socialising. This young dog hasn't been around dogs at all for the first few months of its life. And then suddenly you take it to a dog park and it sees all these other big dogs, doesn't know how to deal with it. This is where it comes from, because sometimes aggression, it gets misread as aggression when it could be fear. So I probably should reword it a bit. There's aggression, outright aggression, where a dog wants to attack other dogs. Most of the time it's not that. Normally it's lack of socialising. So it's nervous, it's anxious, and it looks like aggression, but it's not. It's really a dog that's just very uncomfortable, very nervous, and doesn't know how to socialise with his other dogs. And you can get rid of that very easily by socialising it very young, consistently, having good experiences, no negative experiences. If you see a dog that you think is not going to work well with your dog, don't take it near it. Trust your gut. You don't want your young pup having a bad experience and then thinking all dogs are bad, or it remembers that you want to have good, positive experiences with other dogs. And you have this right, it is your dog. You don't have to go near other dogs if you don't want to. If you're not comfortable, don't go near them. This is up to you. Don't feel pressured by someone to go, oh, I want to pat your dog, or I want your dog to meet my dog. This is your dog, bring it out how you want. But be aware, socialising is very, very important. Understand how to read your dog's body language, correcting them at very young for behaviour you don't like. Remember, you are at the top. How they act depends on how you let them act. So if they're going to get away with aggression and you just ignore it, that can build very easily, like our police dogs in the army. We can get a dog from day one with pretty much no prey drive, very little prey drive, to building that prey drive up to eventually 3 months later that dog can attack an arm by building it up and teaching it. Or we could stop that. We can teach it to different levels. That is the same with your dog with aggression. You can let it build, you can let it build, you can let it build, or you can stop it there and then. By the first time you see it, stamp it out. Teach your dog that behaviour is not acceptable. So be aware of aggression. Make sure you're socialising your dog. Let them meet dogs with positive experiences, leaving, having fun, having good association with where it goes as a good positive place to be, not a negative place to be. Be aware of that. Now, your basic obedience, it is that, it is basic. Keep it basic, doesn't have to be complicated, but think of a few simple rules. Ones I like to use, were taught to me, would be 1 command, 1 response. So we command, direct and praise. Give the dog the command. Dog's name first, Max, sit. Okay, it doesn't sit, direct it to sit, praise it for sitting. That is more classical conditioning. So you've got your 2 basic ideas of teaching a dog. Classical conditioning and more operant conditioning, which is like a positive reinforcement thing all the time. So you'll say sit to your dog, you might say it 20 times, the dog eventually sits and you reward it. My way about that, and a lot of other good trainers, is more along the lines of 1 command. You say it once, the dog doesn't do it, you push it into position. It's not about hurting your dog, it's just pushing it into position, teaching it. You say the word sit, and you show it what sit means. We could teach a dog sit by saying pen. It doesn't matter what you say. Obviously we use common sense words, but we could use anything. So my 1 command, 1 response. Be firm but fair. Be firm. Don't be afraid to reprimand your dog. And on the other end, praise your dog, obviously, but it's okay to reprimand your dog. Your dog doesn't take it personal. It doesn't sit in the corner and say, oh, I got spoken to terribly. You can't sit it in a timeout in a bedroom and it sits in the room and goes, I'm sorry for what I did. It doesn't. It sits in the room and looks around and goes, what can I bite and scratch and pull apart in this room? So reprimand has to be at the right time, praise at the right time, firm but fair, 1 command, 1 response. And remember, they're instinctive, opportunistic predators. So they're very, very instinctive. What they do with digging, with running and chasing things, it's all in here. It's DNA. It's very hard for them not to do. And the opportunistic side of it is if you leave a gate open, unless the dog's taught not to do it, it's going to go at the gate. Don't be angry at the dog. Shut the gate next time. Be aware. If you give a dog an opportunity, it's going to take the opportunity. And they are still predatory animals. That pulling the rope that you have and the tug of war, that's all predatory instinct. We've honed it so it's domesticated and fun and good times, but truth is, to that dog, that could be a bone, they could be pulling meat off that bone. But we see it as a toy and a ropes, understands they still have that predatory instinct. So if you're going to play that tug of war, it's okay, but teach the dog when you say stop, it stops. It puts the rope down and it understands that the leader has spoken, game is over. Instinctive, opportunistic predators. Be firm but fair, 1 command, 1 response. Now, choose the style of training you're going to do, whether you use the more positive reinforcement or use the classical conditioning, the 1 command, 1 response, that's up to you. I have my opinion what I think is better, and that'll be more on the classical side. That being said, there is a need for other ways to do it as well. Don't get me wrong, different dogs need different training to find your way home. But eventually, I like to come back to that area, that 1 command. Using your primary and secondary rewards, which be food for a great job and a pat for average, being aware of different reward systems, and don't forget your approximation training, successive approximation. Example be, you have a goal of doing a 10-metre sit stay with your dog. Let's start at 1 metre, half a metre for 5 seconds. Do that 10 times perfect. Then move to a metre, 10 times perfect. 2 metres. If you fail at 2, go back to 3. Have that approximation training until you build. The idea of that is you have a goal to get to and you break down that goal to get to that level where you want to get to. So that is your approximation training. You take your time, you build, and you eventually get there and you reward the behaviour you want and you tend to ignore the stuff you don't want. You don't need to overly reprimand, but the reward for that good 30-second sit stay, great dog. Then I move to another meter, great dog, and you move and you move and you move. And you be very patient and you be very, very consistent. Now, there's a lot more to dog training, but there's some good basics to remember. Hopefully this will give you some notes to write down and things to go by with your dog. Understand that you are in control. Remembering things like entering and leaving gates and doors, you go first, all of these basics. But everything I spoke about should cross over to their daily lives every day. When you feed it, sit, stay, watch the food, free, eat, whatever word you use, release to eat on command. Be in control of your dog from day one, and you're going to enjoy your dog more, have a better relationship, and less frustration with your dog. So remember all these tips, very, very important, but the socialising, the anxiety and the aggression, learn how to deal with it, learn how not to cause it, and you're going to have a much better dog for it. Hope this helped you out. I appreciate it. Subscribe if you enjoyed it. Share the video, let others know about it, and we can grow this channel and bring you more videos. Thanks again, guys. See ya.